whole tent went quiet at once, like someone had pulled a plug on the sound. 140 people, a string quartet, the clink of forks against rented china, all of it stopped between one breath and the next. Then I heard a chair scrape back on the wooden dance floor, hard, and an old man near the bar was on his feet before anyone understood why. "Stay seated, everybody," he said, except his voice cracked on the word everybody, "but you should know there's a Medal of Valor standing in this room." My mother set down her wineglass so carefully it didn't make a sound. My sister's new husband turned his head in slow motion. And my father, the man who once told me firefighting was what you did when you weren't smart enough for anything else, looked at me the way you'd look at a stranger who'd somehow gotten into your house. It lasted maybe 10 seconds. 10 seconds that took apart 31 years of pretending I was somebody else. But it didn't start in that tent on the water. It started with a text message 3 weeks before, on a Wednesday night when I was still in my station boots with grease under 2 fingernails. I was sitting on the back bumper of Engine 12 in the apparatus bay, eating cold lo mein out of the cargent because we'd gotten toned out twice during dinner, and I'd given up on it being hot. Sacramento in late September still holds the day's heat into the night, and the bay doors were rolled up to let whatever breeze there was move through. My phone lit up on the diamond plate beside me. Mom. My mother doesn't text questions. She texts the long way around, 3 paragraphs to ask one thing, and you learn to read for the thing underneath. This one started with how excited everyone was about the wedding, how the photographer my sister hired had a 6-month waiting list, how the estate on the Sound had a strict palette, dusty blue, ivory, sage, and the planner had asked everyone in the family to stay within the aesthetic. I read all of it twice. Then I got to the last line. "Sweetheart, your sister and I were talking and we were wondering if you'd be comfortable wearing a regular gown instead of your work uniform. It's such a formal event. We just don't want anything to feel out of step with the look of the day. You understand, work uniform. Like I'd be showing up in turnouts that smelled of smoke, soot on my collar, instead of the dress blues I'd worn exactly 4 times in 11 years. The Class A, white gloves, the wheel cap, every brass button polished, 11 years of service ribbons in their exact order, and above all of them a medal that almost nobody outside the fire service would recognize on sight, and every single firefighter in the country would clock from across a parking lot. I sat there a while. The bay smelled like diesel and floor wax. Somewhere behind me, Mateo, my probie, was racking hose and singing along badly to something on his phone. I'd just made captain in March. I'd gotten the Medal of Valor in a ceremony at the Capitol in June. The kind of thing where a senator shakes your hand and your chief tears up a little and a 4-year-old you carried out of a collapsing duplex hides behind his mother's leg and waves at you. I hadn't told my family about the medal. I told them I got an award at work. My mother had said, "That's nice, honey," and then told me my sister had booked the venue. I texted back, "I already RSVP'd. Flight lands the 17th. The 3 dots came and went twice. Then, wonderful. And the dress thing, you'll think about it? It would mean a lot to your sister." I didn't answer that part. I put the phone in my pocket, finished the cold noodles, and at some point that night between calls I drove home, and instead of going to bed I opened the closet in the spare room and unzipped the garment bag I almost never touch. The dress blues hung there exactly the way I keep them. I ran my thumb over the metal ribbon, that pale blue with the white stars, and I said out loud to nobody, "Guess we're going to Connecticut." I haven't always been Captain Donnelly. For most of my life I was just the older one, the one who didn't fit the picture. I grew up in Fairfield County, the part of Connecticut where the lawns are the size of soccer fields, and everybody's dad does something with money or medicine. Mine was a cardiologist with a practice in Stamford and his name on a wing of the hospital. My mother ran an interior design firm that did the kind of houses you see in magazines, all imported tile and reclaimed barnwood that costs more than new. My younger sister was the kind of beautiful that opens rooms, homecoming court, 1,000 friends, the whole town watching to see what she'd do next. And then there was me. I was the kid who, at 9, asked the volunteer firefighters at the town fair if I could try on the helmet and then wouldn't give it back. I was the one who, when the smoke detector went off because Dad burned the salmon, did not run outside with everyone else. I went and found it and figured out which one it was. My parents thought it was a phase. Then I turned 13 and asked for a fire extinguisher for Christmas, a real one, and I think that's when my father started looking at me like a problem he hadn't budgeted for. He had a plan for me, and the plan was medicine, like him, pre-med at a good school, then his alma mater, then someday a brass plate on a door. He'd say it at dinner like it was already decided. When Maeve's a doctor, he'd start, and I'd feel my whole chest go tight. My sister got to be whatever she was becoming. I got handed a future like a coat, 2 sizes too small, and was told to grow into it. I went to college because that's what you did. I lasted 3 semesters of pre-med, getting B's. I had to claw for in classes I hated before I drove past a recruitment day for a county fire academy and pulled over in the parking lot and sat there for 45 minutes. I didn't tell my parents I dropped the pre-med track. I told them I was exploring options. Then I got accepted to the academy, and the morning I left for it, I left a note on the kitchen island because I was a coward about my father's face, and I drove west and didn't look back. The academy nearly killed me, and I mean that closer to literally than my family will ever understand. 16 weeks. Hauling hose up a 7-story tower in full gear in August, my lungs screaming behind the mask. Foreseeable entry drills until my forearms wouldn't close. Live burns where they'd light a room and send you in to learn what fire actually does, how it doesn't roar like in the movies, how it whispers and then turns the whole ceiling into a sheet of orange in a second and a half. I called home once during the worst week, dehydrated, my voice shot from coughing. My mother answered, "How's the firefighter camp going, honey?" Camp. Like I'd gone away to make lanyards. "It's hard, Mom," I said. "Well," she said, gentle as anything, "you can always come home. There's no shame in it not being for you." I want you to understand she meant that kindly. That was the worst part. Come home, quit, be the daughter we know how to talk about. I said I wasn't coming home. She said, "Okay, sweetie," and then told me my sister had landed a brand deal with a skincare company, and could I believe it? I graduated the academy near the top of my class. I called to tell them. My father got on the line and said, "That's good, Maeve. So you'll do this for a couple years and then figure out the real plan?" I said, "Sure, Dad." I stopped expecting them to ask me what any of it meant after that. It's easier on you when you stop expecting. 11 years. I made it 11 years, and they never once visited a firehouse. Never asked what a captain does that a firefighter doesn't. When I called, my mother asked 2 questions. "Are you being safe?" and "When are you coming east?" and then handed the conversation to whatever my sister was up to. There was a logic to it I came to understand. If she didn't ask what the job actually was, she didn't have to picture me crawling down a black hallway feeling for a wall with the back of my hand, because you can't see your own glove in front of your mask. It was easier to imagine me hosing down a brush fire at a comfortable distance. I let her have that. For years I let everybody have that. Here's the thing they didn't ask about. 2 years ago, March, a row of attached duplexes off Stockton went up just before dawn. The kind of fire that gets into the void spaces and runs the whole building before you can get ahead of it. We had a report of everybody out. We almost always get a report of everybody out. I was a lieutenant then, running the interior crew, and we were doing our primary search of the B-side unit when I heard it. Not a cry. Kids in smoke don't cry. They go quiet. That's what nobody tells you. I heard a thump, a small one. The sound of a little body falling off a bed in a back room because he'd been trying to hide from the smoke under it and passed out instead. The floor above us was already failing. My captain called everybody out over the radio. The right call, the textbook call. The building was telling us it was done. I keyed up and said I had a possible victim in the back bedroom and I was going for it. I went. I will not dress it up for you. I found a 4-year-old boy under a toddler bed, dead weight, and I got him into my chest, and I came back through a hallway that was lit orange at the far end now, and a section of ceiling came down behind me close enough that I felt the heat of it through my hood. And Mateo grabbed my SPA strap from the doorway and hauled both of us out into the gray morning. The boy lived. He's 6 now. He sent me a drawing this past Christmas of a fire truck with a tiny stick figure on it labeled My Hero, and I keep it taped inside my locker door. That's what the Medal of Valor was for. There are years they don't award it to anybody. My family knew none of it. I told my mother, months after, that there'd been a rough one at work, and she'd said she hoped I was taking care of myself, and then asked if I'd seen my sister's engagement post. So 3 weeks before the wedding, when the text came asking me to leave the uniform home so it wouldn't clash with the sage in the dusty blue, something in me went very still and very calm. It was the same calm I get on a working fire, when everything slows down and gets quiet and queer. I wasn't going to argue. I was going to wear it. I flew east on the 17th. I checked into the hotel near the venue, hung the garment bag in the closet, and went to the rehearsal dinner in the normal dress, because the rehearsal dinner wasn't the point. My mother hugged me and said I looked thin. My father shook my hand. My father shakes my hand and asked how the flight was. My sister, glowing, gripped both my hands and said she was so glad I was here, and then in nearly the same breath, low, just for me, "You got my message, right? About tomorrow." I said I did. She smiled like that settled it. The wedding was the next afternoon, at an estate right on Long Island Sound, the kind of place with a stone terrace and a lawn that runs down to the water and a white tent the size of a basketball court. It was, I'll admit, beautiful. The light off the water in the late afternoon, the bare beginnings of the season's chill in the air, 200 people in their best clothes. My sister married a genuinely decent man named Grant, a guy who teaches high school history, and somehow ended up with my sister. And at the ceremony, watching her cry behind her veil, I felt the old ache, and underneath it, something simpler and warmer, because whatever else, she's my sister and I love her. I changed for the reception. I'd kept the dress on for the ceremony. The ceremony was hers. But the reception, the part where 200 people would be in a tent for 4 hours, that was where I decided I'd stop hiding. I went up to the room they'd given the family for touch-ups, and I put on the dress blues. Wheel cap, white gloves, every button. I looked at myself in the mirror for a second. Then I went down. You learn to read a room fast in my line of work. I felt it the moment I stepped into the tent, the little hitch in the conversation nearest the entrance, the heads turning, the recalibration. A uniform does that. My mother spotted me from across the floor, and her face did something complicated, a smile she put on over something else. She crossed to me quick, took my elbow, steered me toward a corner like I was a small fire she could keep contained. "Honey," she said, smiling for the room, "I thought we talked about this." "You talked about it, Mom," I said. "I just listened. People are going to think it's strange." Her voice dropped. "It's a wedding, not a parade. Why on earth would you want to wear that here?" And I want to answer that honestly, because I know how it can look from the outside, and I thought about it on the flight. "Mom," I said, "nobody asks the groom's grandfather to take off his veteran's pin. Nobody'd ask a man not to wear his wedding ring from the wife he lost. This isn't a costume. It's 11 years. The medal on it is for a morning I almost didn't come home from. I'm not wearing it to make a scene. I'm wearing it because it's mine, and I'm done pretending it isn't. She didn't have anything for that." She squeezed my arm and went back to her table, and I got a glass of water and stood at the edge of the dance floor and let people look. A few of Grant's relatives came over to say the uniform was sharp. A little girl asked if I drove a fire truck, and I said I did, and she told me very seriously that her hamster died, and I told her I was sorry, and that was the nicest conversation I had all night. It was during the toasts that it happened. The best man had just sat down. The room was full and loose and a little drunk by then, the band setting up, and an old man, 2 tables over. I'd noticed him earlier, late 70s maybe. Ramrod straight in a way that told you everything. The groom's great-uncle, as it turned out, had been watching me for a while. I'd felt it. He stood up. He used the table to do it, his hands not quite steady, and he stood, and his chair scraped on the floor, and the tent went quiet, because an old man standing up alone during a quiet moment makes a room go quiet. "Forgive me," he said, to no one and everyone. "I don't mean to interrupt the kid's day." He looked at me, but I spent 34 years on the job in Bridgeport, 12 as a chief, and I've been to more funerals than I can count. And I have seen that ribbon. He lifted his chin toward my chest, exactly twice in my life before tonight. Once on a man's casket. His voice went. He breathed. "There is a medal of valor in this room, and where I come from, you stand for that." And then a younger man near the back stood up. Grant's cousin, a Bridgeport firefighter himself, I learned later. And then 2 more men I didn't know, and somebody's father, and a woman in a navy dress who I found out had done 20 years as a paramedic. Maybe 8 people all told scattered around a tent full of strangers in their wedding clothes, standing up for me. 8 people who knew exactly what that pale blue ribbon costs. I have been handed that medal by a senator. I have had my chief weep over it. None of it landed in my chest the way those 8 people standing in their dinner jackets did. I had to lock my jaw to keep my face still. My mother had her hand pressed flat to her collarbone. My sister, at the head table in her gown, was staring at me with her mouth slightly open and her eyes wet, and I couldn't read it and didn't try, and my father had gone completely white. He sat there gripping the edge of the table like the floor was tilting. The old chief sat back down. The band, bless them, started playing, and the room found its noise again, and people came back to themselves. But the thing had happened, and you can't unhappen a thing like that. I slipped out onto the stone terrace a while later to breathe. The sound was black and silver in the dark, the lights of boats far out, the air cold enough now to feel good on my face. I heard the door behind me, and I knew the step. My father came and stood at the railing beside me, not too close, looking out at the water instead of at me. For a long time he didn't say anything. Then, that man, the chief, he said twice. He cleared his throat. He'd seen it twice. "It's rare," I said. "What did you do?" It wasn't quite a question. His voice had something in it I'd never heard from him. Careful, like he was afraid of the answer. So I told him, not the version I give at dinner parties. The real one. The duplex, the dawn, the report that everybody was out. The sound a small body makes falling off a bed in a room you can't see. The order to evacuate that I disobeyed and why. And what it's like to come back through a hallway that's gone orange behind you with 60 pounds of gear and a 4-year-old against your chest, betting your whole life that the floor holds 3 more seconds. I told him the boy is 6 now. I told him about the drawing in my locker. My father is not a man who cries. I've seen him, at exactly 1 funeral, keep his face like stone. He stood there at that railing with his hands gripped together and his head down, and I watched his shoulders go, just slightly, just once. "You sent that note," he said finally. "When you left for the academy, you left it on the counter and you drove off, and I—" He stopped. "I told your mother you'd be back in a year. I said it like I knew. I know you did." "I had you wrong," he said. The words came out of him slow and rough, like they'd been stuck somewhere a long time and didn't come loose easy. "I had you wrong for 30 years, Maeve. I kept waiting for you to come back and be something I'd already decided you were supposed to be. And the whole time you were—" He gestured at the medal, at the uniform, at the dark water, at all of it. "You were already more than anything I planned for you. I didn't say it's okay because it wasn't, exactly, and we both knew it. I let the quiet sit there between us, and I think that was the most honest thing I could have given him. After a while, he said, "Will you tell me about the medal again sometime?" The whole thing. I want to actually understand it. And there it was, the question I've been waiting 31 years to hear him ask. I said yes. We stood there in the cold a little longer, and then we went back inside because it was my sister's wedding, and there's only so much a terrace can hold. The rest of the night was different. Word had moved through the tent the way it does, and people came up to me, not the polite, edge of the room kind of nice, but real. A man told me his daughter had just started at an academy in Ohio, and could he get my email for her? Grant came and found me, my brand new brother-in-law, and shook my hand with both of his and said, "I had no idea. I had no idea." My sister came last, near the end, her shoes in her hand, makeup a little wrecked from the day. "I told you not to wear it," she said, not angry, wrecked it. "You did." That man stood up, and I just kept thinking, "I almost made you leave it in the closet." Her voice broke on closet. "I was so worried about the colors. I was worried about the colors, Maeve, and you ran into a building that was falling down." "You didn't know," I said. "I should have asked." She pressed her lips together. "All this time I should have just asked you what you do." She asked me to be in a photo with the uniform on. The official photographer, the one with the 6-month waiting list, posed the whole family by the tall windows with the dark water behind us, my sister and Grant in the middle, my parents on one side, me on the other in dress blues with the medal catching the light. As the flash went, my father leaned over and said, low, "Only to me. Your mother already knows exactly which wall this is going on." I laughed, and the flash caught that too, and it's the one they framed. That was 3 years ago this fall. Things don't transform overnight. Real people aren't like that. But they shift, if you let them. My father called me 6 weeks after the wedding, on a regular Tuesday, and asked if I had 20 minutes. And then he asked me questions about the job for the better part of an hour. What a captain actually does on scene. The difference between an engine and a truck company. What a flashover is and how you know one's coming. He took notes. My mother told me later he keeps a little spiral notebook by his reading chair now, with fire terms written in it in his careful doctor's handwriting, so he can follow along when I call. My mother became, against all expectation, the most relentless firefighter's mother in the state of Connecticut. She tells the woman at the pharmacy. She tells her book club. She told a man at a charity gala, I'm told, that her daughter earned the Medal of Valor. And did he have any idea how few of those get handed out? The first time I heard her do it in front of me, I merely choked on my coffee, this woman who once called it firefighter camp. And my sister surprised me most. She used that influencer reach she has, all those followers, and started doing a thing every September for the anniversary of a local line of duty death, raising money for a fund that helps the families. She called me last spring to ask how the survivor benefits actually work for a firefighter's widow, because she wanted to get the facts right before she posted. And I said, when do you know about any of this? And she said, since my sister stopped letting us look away. There's a photograph on the mantle in my parents' house now, in the living room where I grew up feeling like a coat that didn't fit. My sister and Grant in the middle, my parents beside them, and me at the end in my dress blues, the medal bright on my chest. My father told me at Christmas it's the first thing anybody asks about when they come in. And your mother, he said, tells them the whole story. The duplex, the kid, all of it, takes her 20 minutes. She won't let you skip a part. I used to think respect was something you climbed toward, that if I just got high enough, captain, then chief, medals, whatever, my family would finally look up and see me. It turns out that's not how it works. The promotions didn't do it. The medal in its box on a shelf didn't do it. What did it? Was one old man in a tent who knew what he was looking at, deciding to stand up. It was somebody seeing me clearly for the length of 10 seconds, and the people I love watching them do it, A uniform isn't a costume, and it isn't pride, and it isn't a thing you wear to be looked at. It's a record. Every ribbon on it is a morning somebody decided to walk toward the thing everyone else was running from. That deserves to be in the room, not hidden in a closet because it doesn't match the napkins. If there's somebody in your life whose path you never quite understood, the one whose work you wave off because you've never let yourself picture what it actually cost them, go ask them. Not the polite version, the real one. Ask them what the hardest morning of their job looked like, and then sit there and listen to the whole answer, even the parts that scare you. You might find out you've had them wrong for 30 years too. And you might still have time to stand up.